Hello, and welcome to Psych Night. I'm your host, Joyce.
And I'm your host, Caitlynn. Today we will be exploring the basics of social psychology.
First off is attribution. Attribution theory is the theory that we explain someone's behavior by crediting either the situation or the person's personality.
Now, the fundamental attribution error is when people explain the behavior specifically by crediting the person's personality rather than the situation.
For example, if someone cuts you off while you're driving, then you may all of a sudden think that they're a jerk without taking into account the situation, only their personality traits.
Rude. That person needs anger management classes or something.
Now I have attitudes and actions. Attitudes are feelings that predispose us to respond in a particular way. Our attitudes can affect our actions by taking the form of persuasion.
And one form of persuasion is peripheral route persuasion. And this occurs when people are influenced by environmental cues, such as a person's attractiveness.
The other is central route persuasion, which is when people who are interested focus on the argument and the evidence that is obviously there.
In other cases, actions can affect attitudes. One way is the foot in the door phenomenon, when people who first agreed to a small request later agree to a larger request.
And then the other one is door in the face phenomenon. This is when someone begins with a large and unreasonable request, and then they ask for something that's smaller and much more reasonable.
So for instance, if a friend comes up and they want to borrow $100, you are most likely to say no. But if after that they lower the amount to $20, that sounds more reasonable, and you are more likely to say yes.
Hey, can I have $50?
That's a little much, I'm sorry.
Oh man, well, can I have 20?
Okay.
Yeah? Let's see. Thanks.
Okay, now let's look at roles.
A role is a set of expectations about a social position that defines how one must behave in that position.
Role-playing affects attitudes. What may seem fake to you at first eventually becomes you.
Yeah, and now we look at cognitive dissonance theory, which is the theory that we act to reduce the discomfort, or dissonance, we feel when our attitudes and actions do not agree with each other.
For example, someone may think they aced the test and then find out that they actually failed.
And he may have thought that he was super smart, but now his attitude doesn't match his action.
To fix this, he makes himself feel better by saying that the teacher made him fail because the teacher just hates him.
Oh man, I thought I aced this test. I knew Dano hated me. He just wants me to fail this class.
Justified! Social psychology also includes conformity and obedience. Conformity is when a person adjusts their behavior or thinking in order to coincide with a group standard.
Social psychologists like Solomon Asch found that people are most likely to adjust their behavior or thinking when they feel incompetent or insecure, and everyone else in the group agrees with one another.
The chameleon effect is automatic mimicry, which is our tendency to unconsciously imitate others' expressions, postures, and voice tones.
Automatic mimicry helps us to empathize so we feel what others are feeling. This is known as mood linkage or sharing the up and down emotions.
And another part of conformity is social influences. Normative social influence results from a person's desire to gain approval or avoid disapproval.
An informal social influence results from one's willingness to accept others' opinions about reality.
Now, obedience is compliance with a demand, especially when it comes from an authority figure.
Let's take a look at Stanley Milgram's experiment. He had one person apply shock to a victim whenever they either answered the question wrong or didn't give an answer at all. Approximately 2/3 of those participants complied fully, giving the full shock.
Obedience was highest when the person giving orders was nearby and perceived as an authority figure, if there were no role models for defiance, if the research was supported by a prestigious institution, and if the victim was depersonalized or at a distance.
Now, our next topic of discussion is going to be group behavior.
And with group behavior comes social facilitation, which is the improved performance on simple or well-learned tasks while in the presence of others.
However, if it is a task that one may not be particularly good at, then their performance tends to decrease.
Another term to know is social loafing, which is the tendency for people in a group to exert less effort when attaining a common goal than when the individual is fully accountable. Social loafing is caused by 3 things.
1, people acting as part of the group feel less accountable and therefore worry less about what others think.
2, group members view their efforts as dispensable.
And 3, some slack off when group members share equal benefits.
I think Caitlynn finished up the script. We're definitely going to have to film a little bit more. We didn't get a lot done today. So.
Yeah?
Are you paying attention to me?
Uh-huh.
De-individuation is the loss of self-awareness and self-restraint occurring in group situations that foster arousal and anonymity.
For example, women wearing unidentifiable hoods delivered twice as much shock to the victims when compared to women wearing no hoods.
Group polarization is the enhancement of a group's opinion after a discussion within the group.
Groupthink is a mode of thinking that occurs when the desire for harmony in a decision-making group overrides a realistic appraisal of alternatives.
Groupthink is fed by overconfidence, conformity, self-justification, and group polarization.
Social control is the power of the situation, and personal control is the power of the individual. When these two interact, it is the power of the individuals.
And minority influence is the power of one or two individuals to sway the opinion of the majority.
Now, for culture, it is the enduring behaviors, ideas, attitudes, values, and traditions shared by a group of people and transmitted from one generation to the next.
While a norm is an understood rule for accepted and expected behavior. Norms describe proper behavior.
Norms vary across different cultures, and when we don't understand what is expected or accepted, we experience culture shock. Over time, cultures change and shape our lives.
Now, let's move on to prejudice. Prejudice means prejudgment. It is an unjustifiable and usually negative attitude towards a group of people and its members.
Prejudice generally involves stereotype beliefs, negative feelings, and a predisposition to discriminatory action. It is a three-part mixture.
The first part are beliefs, in this case called stereotypes. The second part, emotions, like hostility or fear. And the third part is a predisposition for action. And actions are those actions that discriminate.
Prejudice is a negative attitude, and discrimination is a negative behavior.
It is important to note the difference between the two.
Hey, Cowboys are #1 in the NFL.
I think the Patriots are the best team.
No, you're wrong.
So,
What happened? Why are girls so emotional? Like, why?
And social inequalities and divisions are partly to blame for prejudice.
When some people have money, power, and prestige that others do not, the haves usually develop attitudes that justify things as they are.
This is known as the just world phenomenon, which is the tendency for people to believe the world is just and fair, and that therefore people get what they deserve and they deserve what they get.
Such reasoning enables the rich to see both their own wealth and the poor's misfortune as justly deserved.
An in-group bias is the us, or people with whom we share a common identity, while an out-group is them, or those perceived as being different from those in the in-group.
In-group bias is the tendency to favor our own group.
And the scapegoat theory is the theory that prejudice offers an outlet for anger by providing someone to blame.
Next on our list today is aggression.
Aggression is any physical or verbal behavior intended to hurt or destroy.
Biology influences our threshold for aggressive behaviors at 3 different levels.
The levels are genetic, which are inherited traits, neural activity in key brain areas, or severe head injuries, and biochemical, such as drinking alcohol or having excess testosterone in your bloodstream.
Aggression is a complex behavior resulting from the interaction of biology and experience.
And the social cultural influences of aggression include things like de-individuation from being in a crowd, challenging environmental factors such as crowding, heat, and direct provocations, parental models of aggression, minimal father involvement, being rejected from a group, and exposure to violent media.
hey, what's up?
Stop! I'm playing a game! What are you doing? Like, do you not have any common sense? Get out of here! Stop!
Frustration, previous reinforcement for aggressive behavior, dominating behavior, which boosts testosterone levels in the blood, low self-control, and observing an aggressive role model are all psychological factors that can lead to aggression.
The frustration-aggression principle is the principle that frustration, which is the blocking of an attempt to achieve some goal, can generate aggression.
Media portrayals of violence provide social scripts for children that they learn to follow.
A social script is a culturally modeled guide for how to act in various situations.
2 social scripts are that viewing sexual violence contributes to greater aggression towards women, and that playing violent video games increases aggressive thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. So let's move on to attraction.
In friendships, proximity is the most powerful predictor. It can provide opportunity for aggression, but more often so for liking.
The mere exposure effect is when exposure to a novel stimuli increases liking of those stimuli.
Physical attractiveness increases social opportunities and improves the way we are perceived.
Similarity of attitudes and interests greatly increase liking, especially as relationships develop.
And intimate relationships begin with passionate love, which is an aroused state of intense positive absorption in another.
This eventually shifts to companionate love, which is the deep, affectionate attachment we feel for those with whom our lives are intertwined.
And this compassionate love may develop if enhanced by equity and self-disclosure.
Equity is when people receive from a relationship in proportion to what they give it.
And self-disclosure is revealing intimate aspects of oneself to another person.
Now, altruism is the unselfish regard for the well-being of others.
If an accident has occurred, for example, people are most likely to help when we notice the incident, interpret it as an emergency, and assume responsibility for helping the victim.
Generally, however, if there are others present, people assume that someone else will take responsibility and help. This is known as the bystander effect.
And last is the social exchange theory, which is the view that we help others because it is in our own self-interest.
We believe, as people, that the goal is to maximize personal benefit and minimize the costs.
A conflict is perceived incompatibility of actions, goals, and ideas.
Social traps are situations in which people in conflict pursue their own individual self-interest, which harms the collective well-being.
Individuals and cultures in conflict also tend to form mirror image perceptions that may become self-fulfilling prophecies. Each party views the opponent as untrustworthy and evil-intentioned. Meanwhile, they view themselves as an ethical, peaceful victim.
Peace can result when individuals or groups work together to achieve shared or superordinate goals.
And research indicates that there are 4 processes to help promote peace. These are contact, cooperation, communication, and conciliation.
Graduated and reciprocated initiatives tension reduction, also known as GRIT, is the strategy used to decrease international tensions.
And that's all for tonight on Psych Night. See you next week.